Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, once again, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
Doing great.
Excellent. And Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on?
What is going on? So continuing on from last week's episode, we're going to be talking about Star Wars Visions Season 2 once again. Part 2 this time of Season 2. That's going to be I Am Your Mother, Journey to the Dark Head, and The Spy Dancer. Those are episodes 4 through 6 of this second season. Why do we pick it? Because May the 4th be with you is why we started it.
Also
And then
with you.
I was like, because it'll be easy for just booking this stuff for a few weeks. So as we did last week, we're going to kind of break this up because these are always a little weird. They don't have a ton of trivia to them. So we're going to do kind of like episode by episode. I'll do the little rundown of the facts stuff. Then we'll kind of talk about our thoughts on the episode. And then we'll go on to the next one and repeat until we are done. All these episodes, though, were released May 4th, 2023. The episodes range a runtime of 15 to 20 minutes per episode. As we discussed last week, in the Star Wars animated timeline of things, we had the Volume 1 of Visions back in September of 2021, and we had Tales of the Jedi for October 2022. This is the animated Star Wars timeline. We had the Studio Ghibli short Zen, Grogu, and Dust Bunnies, November of 2022. The Bad Batch Season 2 aired between January and March earlier this year. And then we had the Young Jedi Adventures shorts that aired between March and April, alongside Star Wars Visions Volume 2 launching on May the 4th. We also had the Young Jedi Adventures full Season 1 launched that day. And then kind of in the docket, there's the Bad Batch final season coming TBD 2024 and a to be announced, to be confirmed Tales of the Jedi Season 2. Our roll call here. I Am Your Mother was directed by Magdalena Osinska. Osinska. And the team over at Aardman out of Bristol, England. This team is best known for the Wallace and Gromit claymation style, stop motion stuff, as well as the Chicken Run film franchise, and a number of other projects. The writers for the episode, Magdalena Osinska, was credited for the story, and then Holly Walsh and Barunka O'Shaughnessy were credited with the teleplay here. And the cast of I Am Your Mother features Maxine Peake as Kalina Kalfas, aka the mom, Charithra Chandran as Ani Sukaleen, aka Annie Kalfas, our main little protagonist. Weirdly, they don't credit all of like the side characters. The only other characters that are credited here are Daisy Haggard as Dorota Van Riepel and BB Cave as Julin Van Riepel, the like evil mother and daughter team. But then we do also have cameo of cameos this season, Dennis Lawson reprising his role as Wedge Antilles, head of this little academy training group here. So yeah, that's what I got. No trivia for this one. So what did everyone think of I Am Your Mother here? Cameron, I will throw it to you first.
What a delightful, wonderful take on Star Wars. The whole line, I am your mother, being used as such a perfect cue at the very end. I had a blast with it. It's so much fun. It is with it, like, holds on to that spirit that you want to see from something like Wallace and Gromit. And just exemplifies that to the nth degree. The use of Wedge Antilles is phenomenal. Shout out to Wedge Antilles. OG Wraith Squadron, Expanded Universe, Never Forget.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just an absolute fantastic just use of a cameo for that. And also just being like, I am, the only thing I'm slightly disappointed about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a part where like they go through like a desert part of the planet. Yeah. In during the race, if it hadn't been for that, I would have sworn this was Coruscant. And I think that would have been an amazing piece of canon is if they established properly that proper Coruscanti, the upper class is proper British, and then the
posh, right?
And then like just the kind of gutter British. I think that would have been a lot of fun to canonize that. They didn't do that, but it's fine.
Once again, Cameron gets hung up on the weirdest things.
I love it.
Logan, what'd you think of this one?
So first and foremost, I need to say before we even get into the actual episode itself, for me, anytime I hear "I'm Your Mother," I immediately think to the Fred Armisen, Zac Efron Saturday Night Live sketch that is just him screaming, "I am your mother." And so literally every time I said the name of this episode in my head and then had the like mom at the end of the episode say it back, that's all I could think of. And it's very good. And then the second thing that's also important to preface is that we obviously talked about the episodes we were going to watch next last week. And Trevor mentioned that he's never seen Wallace and Gromit, led me to go down a Wallace and Gromit rabbit hole. And I just watched a whole bunch of it this past week, and it's fantastic and makes me even sadder that Trevor has not seen any of it. It's all so good. So many great, quick shorts compilations on there on YouTube. The episode itself is a ton of fun. It's very much in that, style, both, visually and thematically, I think, to like Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run, that kind of claymation style. I think it is probably the one that is the most, New Hope, just sort of like pure fun Star Wars of the 3 episodes we got today. It's very sweet. It's very fun. It feels the most like it was pulled from a like larger animated Star Wars series, right? Like I could imagine this just being a like Clone Wars-esque, like Star Wars Rebels-esque series. And this is just like an episode that got pulled from it. It would fit so neatly into that. How quickly they get like their ground running in terms of the characters, introducing everyone, the dynamics at play. Off we go, right? I had a ton of fun. I also did not know Wedge is going to be here, and as myself and Cameron can attest as to older prequel trilogy era Star Wars fans, right? Like shout out to Wedge being one of those random Star Wars characters who's not important at all, but everyone just loved for like no discernible reason even, Wedge is the best. He's great. And I also liked this like interpretation of Wedge, of him sort of being almost like this like sort of vapidly, like just like fun, charming, smiley guy, is like so different than the portrayal in the movies. And I really enjoyed that.
The thing about it is the movies, he has like, 3 scenes total in all 3 films. So and,
over the trilogy, right?
He's a minor character in all 3 of those scenes.
He's Luke's wingman, though.
Yeah, he's Luke's wingman. The thing that I loved about it, so in the expanded universe, Wedge Antilles is such a he has this entire Wraith Squadron series of books, that are fantastic. Like still hold up. They're really, really good. But it does flesh out. Yeah, he is it's like, oh, Luke seems to have a type in friend, and that's cocky flyboys. Like that's his type of friend. Because Wedge Antilles is 100% this, but there's also like the dichotomy between Wedge's planet getting split up in a civil war and his sister marrying like a Moff in later books. It's crazy. Like the Antilles family tree is insane in the expanded universe. So
I mean, the canon of him in Star Wars Rebels is basically like he was an Imperial pilot who defected and joined the Rebels. So.
Yeah, in the original, like the scene that got cut from the beginning of Star Wars: A New Hope is the academy that they're referring to is the Imperial Flight Academy. And so Luke's friends going off, and then his friends also joining the rebellion afterwards is all part of that kind of concurrent like plot of that. Because it's also like, oh, if he had joined the Imperial Flight Academy, he would have found out later that his friends were quote unquote traitors. Like, and that would have been awful. So yeah, it's cool. Also, one of his friends dies at the end of New Hope. So
yeah, Biggs Darklighter. That's like my relationship to Wedge and Biggs has pretty much always been influenced by Final Fantasy because they're always like little background cameo characters across the Final Fantasy series in honor of these those 2 Star Wars characters.
Yep.
But yeah, like I think like it's a fun random pull to have Wedge be the thing. Also, and I only found this out because the continued struggles with like Disney Plus just running terribly in a
Oh.
browser. The like this is the one. This is the only one that has like a not like a post credit scene, but like it comes back to him talking over the credits and like doing his sales pitch again and being like, "Come buy the merch, please," and like doing that. And so it's a fun little like gag if you're actually watching the credits and not forced into whatever Disney Plus is trying to move you on to next.
Right.
I enjoyed him here. He's fun. I mean, like, even though I've never watched Wallace and Gromit, I know the style well enough. I know,
Right.
again, obviously I've seen Chicken Run. And I think there's like a charm to it. I think this episode most reminded me of like the Bohemian Tatooine episode, or Tatooine Rhapsody rather, from the first one, because it's like the most lighthearted of the bunch.
Right.
It's not dark, dreary Sith versus Jedi kind of stuff, sadness. It is like, hey, we're having a
We'll get to
light.
it.
It's a family race, and this girl is ashamed of her mom, so she doesn't invite her to the family race. But her mom shows up anyway, and then they're literally off to the races. They continue to introduce wonderful, cute little robots. With Z1 here being basically like an R2D2 but a dog.
Like a Slinky.
The wiener
Yeah,
dog.
yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I busted my. Trevor knows, he was in the kitchen with me. I busted my gut laughing when that came on.
Yeah. I love the image of like the little baby Wookiee tearing the doll's
Yeah.
arms off as like a
Yes.
threat, as like a fun, of course, callback to Wookiee will take your arms off. That we've seen repeated over the years. And then yeah, it was just like it was very much like a predictable kind of thing. To what you were saying earlier, Logan, like anytime you hear "I am your mother," you think of thing. I now think of the Meghan Trainor like Mimi kind of song. And that's what I hear. So it was weird anytime I've seen that in the last week or so. But yeah, it was a fun, charming little time. I think it like it is interesting that they have such a fun little cast of characters, and it like so much of it feels like a spin on the pod race, and obviously the girl
Right.
being named Annie.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's like a lot of fun little parallels there. And then yeah, like this weird Wedge as a not a huckster, but like as just kind of a shill for his own
Right.
merch. That's because that's what it is. It's like all proceeds will be going to a very specific like retirement, a very specific soldier's retirement fund or something like that is what he talks about over the end credits. Just a weird random line that's basically like, everything's going to go directly to me. It's going to go into my pocket. This is all supporting me. Thank you very much.
I don't know if you heard this, but the Republic wasn't great about fulfilling promises after the rebellion.
Yeah.
So I doubt he has a pension.
Yeah, it's a charming, fun little like lighthearted affair.
Yeah.
Especially after like the heaviness of some of the other ones. Like I appreciate, and I wasn't expecting the team behind Wallace and Gromit to get like really heavy hitting and dark. So
Right.
like it's nice that sometimes Star Wars can still be just silly fun.
Right.
Since it's like usually just silly fun like this.
Right.
Yeah.
Star Wars, I would say, is 60% silly fun, 30% like cool like action sequences, and then 60, 30. So we're at 10%. 10% is epic duels with incredible cinematic masterpieces music masterpieces accompanying the cinema. That's Star Wars.
I think there's also something to be said for, like, as a final note on this, that like we are all three obviously individuals who are in our 30s now, but like, which doesn't make us old, but also doesn't make us like children anymore. But like, George Lucas has never been anything but unambiguous but the fact that like Star Wars is for kids, right? Like it is like, they're like fun B movie serials that I watched as a child growing up. That's what I wanted to emulate, right? It is everyone else who's gotten mad at him for keep making these same like kind of stories, right? And like that's always been in the DNA of Star Wars, right? And they've gotten darker and done other stuff, and we'll get to that in an episode. But I like that we had this very well. Again, it feels like A New Hope did, right? Like it just feels fun and light and just like very free. And so yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Cam, before we move on?
Even though it would have been completely like unrealistic to have it, I think a cool thing would have been to have like a little mini mantis. This is like my post Jedi Survivor like fervor.
Ooh.
I mean, one of the ships in the race looked like a mantis.
I thought so. I was watching on my phone, so I couldn't tell like entirely, but I thought so. It looked enough like one that it made me wish that there was one there.
Yeah,
to say the
least. I mean, it's not. Yeah,
it's quick.
It's a brief thing, but it looks enough like a mantis class kind of thing that it's like, okay, yeah, I could write that off as it's another.
There you go.
It's another mantis.
Grease gets his his small screen debut.
I mean, I think it was. I think that was the one being flown by like the little green guy and his family. But
oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. Keep it greasy, baby.
There you go. So moving on to the next episode, Journey to the Dark Head. This one was.
Sorry, I can't. It's such a dumb.
You being immature. Thank you, Cam. This is the director is Hyung June Park of Studio Mir. They're based out of Seoul, South Korea.
Mm-hmm.
They worked on a number of animated series, including The Legend of Korra. I believe the 4th season, I think it said, of The Boondocks.
Mm-hmm.
Voltron Legendary Defender for Netflix. And the most recent season 3 of Harley Quinn. So they kind of come in and just work on a whole bunch of stuff. They have like a whole, like, they seem to pretty much be, at least recently, contracted by Warner Brothers and like HBO, because all of the recent stuff they've worked on is like DC shorts and movies or series. So shout out to their team. The writer here is Chung Se-rang, and the cast of characters in this one, we had Ashley Park as and I will specify this as the English voice cast, but I did appreciate that they had like the South Korean voice cast like first in the credits. But as I imagine we all watch this in English, we have Ashley Park as Ara / young Ara. She's in the series Emily in Paris. Eugene Lee Yang playing Tool and young Tool. He is most famous for his work with the Try Guys. And Daniel Day Kim playing Bichan, aka the big bad Sith guy. He's of course in Lost.
Eugene from Try Guys is the
yeah.
Yes.
That's rad.
Tool. Yep.
I used to be a big. Yeah, go ahead and finish, Trevor. Sorry.
Daniel Day Kim from Lost, Hawaii Five-0, and Ryan the Last Dragon as Bichan. And then we have those are like the they've been in other things, so I went ahead and shouted them out. But we also have Albert Kong as a couple other roles, the Interpreter and Jedi Master A, Greg Chun as the shopkeeper / Master Lisagum / training partner / Padawan, Janella Landry as Master Duta, and Judy Alice Lee as Master Moru / another Jedi. And this one did have a little bit of trivia. The Aurebesh text visible on the view screen inside the cockpit and reflected on Ara and Tool late in the episode reads, "Warning, crash imminent." So, if you read your Aurebesh, go ahead and talk Try Guys. I know so little about Try Guys, but when he came up, I was like, I do recognize that guy. What? Oh, Try Guys. Yep. Okay, there we go.
Yep. Eugene Lee Yang. He is a really, really, really cool guy. The Try Guys, of course, famous for their time in BuzzFeed. They are the first big BuzzFeed breakoff. They had some
/ also famous most recently for the Try Guy who
I was about
cheated
to
on his
that,
wife or whatever.
Yeah. No, with an employee like
Ned.
We don't talk about him. The wife guy. That was the year when we all found out wife guys are a lie.
At least one, yeah.
Well,
we don't need to.
Yeah, we don't need to get into
you don't need to spin off into a whole thing on that.
I watched a lot of TikToks that year. That being said, he's awesome. He's been in a lot of stuff. I think my favorite thing he's ever done is actually his coming out video.
Yes, I was going to talk about that too.
Yeah, it is inspirational, and watching it was definitely part of my path of coming out. He goes it's interpretive dance and it's beautiful and gorgeous, and I bawled my eyes out. And then but it also is like one of the things that I look to like kind of give me strength to come out fully. He's awesome. Everybody I know who's ever like talked to him, known him, anything like that, have just he's extremely professional, like to the nth degree when you work with him. But if you know him casually, he's a lot of fun. He's a really cool guy. So
Cool. So what did we think of this this episode as a whole? Logan, I'll throw it to you first.
It's my favorite episode of Star Wars Visions so far. I really liked it. I actually like the name a lot too. So apparently I disagree with Cameron on this, but I think it's like it's a really cool name. But even more than that, like it is the episode of Visions, I think, and really just like a recent Star Wars thing that feels the most true to the idea that, again, Star Wars being a space opera, like this episode feels very operatic, right? It feels very epic and grand. And even though ultimately like nothing really happens, right? Like it's more just like these characters like emotional arcs. It's so grandiose and so larger than life. And these sweeping shots and vistas and stunning visuals, and yeah, I like just for myself wrapped up in it so much. And like especially as someone who I think, you know, admittedly is such a huge Return of the Jedi fan, which is the most operatic of the original trilogy for sure, and even is a big fan of Revenge of the Sith, which is the most operatic of the prequel trilogy, right? Like this feels very much in the same vein as those two films and like that operatic nature of Star Wars. And I don't think the sequel trilogy, excuse me, really ever touched being a like space opera in the same way. And movies are also just made differently, but like, yeah, it felt like it would have fit in either one of those other two movies in episode 6 or episode 3. I absolutely loved it. I loved the little flickers of what we got of these kind of backstories, this kind of internal conflict. It felt very, you know, Luke and Anakin Skywalker-esque as well. This kind of internal battle between light and dark that obviously I think dominates both of their arcs in their respective trilogies and kind of culminates in these very operatic moments. And yeah, like I was just sort of riveted by it the entire time. I liked the sort of weird, like, rock fortune telling society thing, like these like teardrops falling. I thought that was a really cool idea. I like the idea of like her going to like chop off the evil head and then it being like, well, there's light and darkness in all things, right? Like it's just a really, I think, imaginative, great kind of distilled episode of Star Wars in a 20-minute block of like Star Wars is a space opera, right? And then on top of all that is the fact that the Sith Lord looks so cool. And I don't know what the fuck the little like weird whippy thing he's got is, but I'm all about it. I loved it. Here for it 100%, right? Like that felt like they had just like slipped in like a Final Fantasy bad guy into the game maybe, but like I was totally on board with it and I didn't complain at all. And then yeah, like it was just, I think, like a perfect Star Wars Vision episode of what I would want Visions to do, like where they kind of have the freedom to tell their own story, set in sort of a like whatever time period, doesn't have to specify it, and just have this great like light and darkness. You know, you need one to have the other, kind of balance in the fourth thing, and yeah, it was great.
Cool. Cam, anything to add?
Oh yeah, quite a bit actually. First off, I wasn't laughing at the innuendo about it. I was laughing because it's literally about the journey to the dark head of the dark side head of the statue, and it's named Journey to the Dark Head. It's just so on the nose. I get like it's joyful and giddy. I love it. That being said, I thought it was great. For anybody who doesn't know, you touched on Mirror Studio. They've worked on all those things. It was founded by the guys who specifically were the directors, like the head animation directors of Avatar: The Last Airbender. They are truly an incredibly gifted studio. Funnily enough, they are so unknown inside of South Korea. The only thing they've ever had that like debuted in South Korea was the very first season of Korra, and it did not get great. Like was not viewed very much, and so that was the only season that ever came out there for them. So they have absolutely no like national cachet. Everything's international. Uh,
I mean, I feel like that's the case for a lot of Korean studios. Like a lot of like I remember like all of the years I spent watching Futurama commentaries. They were like all the animation on the Futurama
mm,
episodes were coming out of South Korea as well. So like it seems like that's kind of the
it's the industry.
yeah.
Like you expect that, but the thing about it is like you'd expect that from. I think the comparison is when you look at, especially when you look at like first season of Star Wars Visions, is these like very like a lot of more very well known Japanese animation studios, or at least had this long history and heritage of like these like traditional Japanese like popular Japanese anime shows versus something like this, which is Mer Studio. I want them to get as much credit as possible. I think they're phenomenal. If you haven't watched it because you're like, I don't want to watch a Netflix cartoon, Voltron's absolutely freaking amazing from start to finish. Its last season, is it the weakest? Yes. Does it matter? Absolutely not. I think it's fantastic. And on top of that, I think that the entire, I think that they've done such great work, and I think they get to show off so much here. I'm a little surprised they didn't have like very much, if any, humor at all. I know it's a short amount of time that they had, but they do so well in, they do so well with comedic, like physical comedy, that I was a little sad that there wasn't any physical comedy there, but that's just somebody who's a fan of their studio and their work and knowing how good they are at that. Not seeing that, like, it's okay, because what they really excel in out, like, side by side with that is incredible action that it's easy to follow. But at the same time, it's intricate. Those wide shots, those vista shots, they do such an amazing job with those, and they are so great. This is probably, animation-wise, my favorite episode this season so far. It is just so clean, crisp, and to a level of just fluidity and understanding. And on top of that, they do such an amazing job with like, with almost third dimensional effects in regards to like the moisture, the water, all of that. The animation of the eyes and so much focus being put into people's eyes, is such a cool consideration and aspect to put towards it, where even though it's such a brief short scene when oh shoot, what's his name, Toll is confronting himself, and even though it's just for a singular moment, you know, it's not confusing him for his master. It is just him looking at himself, and it's parallel to each other, and you know exactly which side is which, and it's all about their eyes. And the way it would be so easy for the red and blue to just bleed each other out, but the fact that they're able to actually make it intertwine and weave through almost like thread, even on my phone, I could tell that. And it was just like really beautiful, distinct animation style. I really, really enjoyed it. But yeah, that's, also love. We got to tell the Jedi. We're not going to tell the Jedi. She goes to tell the Jedi. Great. Love it. You love to see it.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm probably the coolest on this one of the three of us. It's not that I didn't like it or anything. It's just like I don't have the it. We will talk about my favorite next. But like I really did enjoy the idea of this, like, you know, sect that's not tied to the Jedi or the Sith, and they are just kind of like reading the stones and this whole like prophecy kind of thing. I you know, immediately I'm going to side with the girl who wants to, you know, be a good person and like and find action, as opposed to the, you know, the dotty old guy who's like, no, our job is just to record the stones. We don't you know, engage with them. I'm like, all right, like, you passive piece of crap. that's how we get the kind of crap politics we've had for so long. I also did, though, really enjoy the design of the Sith, and yeah, that like scorpion tail thing, like slicing through Toll's like original master, and just like the tauntingness of like, you've got a lot of hate in you. I'll see you soon, kind of thing, and like we'll finish this at a later day. You know, setting up their battle at the end. I did have to like I didn't catch what was happening in like the climax of the fight in that, like, oh, she had like grabbed all of her drone explosives or whatever and shot them back at the bad guy, and then use that as a distraction for Tool to like slice him down. Like there were just enough like beats missing that I had to go back and like watch that a second time to fully grasp what had happened. But yeah, I mean, everything else you guys touched on, like big, beautiful, wide shots and vistas and stuff like that, really cool. I did love the way they revealed that like there's light and dark in both heads, and that like, oh yeah, like the sun's coming out and now the colors are shifting from red to blue and blue to red. So yeah, you can't just take out one of these things. Of course not. And so instead she just destroys the clouds. Yeah, it was definitely a fun combat. I don't know why it didn't resonate with me as much as it sounds like it did with you guys.
I don't think its story was the strongest. I will say that story wise, a lot of dialogue felt a bit rough. I felt like the things that it excelled at extremely well. But I think the overall synchronicity of the story going forward, like throughout like plot beat to plot beat, was a little like it did feel like it was missing stuff.
Yeah, I think
it's fair.
I think they did like just the most bare bones kind of shorthand with like, all right, we're gonna pair these two up, they're gonna be at odds, and that's gonna come in the form of like they say one snarky thing to each other, and then they're off and do it like picking up stuff, and then now they're fighting, and now they're like on like it seemed like there was, I would have liked to have seen more of like the arc of their relationship, as opposed to, oh, we get to the end and like suddenly, yeah, they both went on the journey they needed, and it's like, did you both though? Like what?
Yeah.
Like yeah.
I feel like it was succinct enough that they did do that, but I do think it was not fleshed out very well. I think you're completely like fair to be like the criticism you're giving to it is completely fair.
Yeah.
I think story wise, it's probably the weakest out of all three. Story wise, I think the next one's definitely the strongest.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on this one before we move on?
I mean, I like the story. I think it worked for me the most out of the three of us, but I also like Return of the Jedi the most of the three of us, right? And
I'm aware of the rankings.
Right. And so, like, you know, I think, thank you for reminding me, That Nerdy Science, top Star Wars film, Return of the Jedi. And I think that, you know, I like those dynamics of Star Wars a lot. Those are the, I think, stories that really work for me. And like, you know, is it Return of the Jedi? No. But I think it has a lot in there that movie does, that Revenge of the Sith does. And we just don't get, I think, a lot of like space opera vibes to Star Wars that much anymore, right? Like a lot of the shows on right now are decidedly not operatic, partially by design and partially by the characters they are, right? Like The Mandalorian and certainly the Book of Boba Fett, or like Obi-Wan, right? These are shows that just are doing different things in the Star Wars universe. And I liked that this went back to kind of more of an older school vibe to it. And so, yeah, it was my favorite. I mean, we'll get there in a second, but like the Fallout episode was my least favorite. So there'll be an interesting conversation. But yeah, I really liked it a lot. I mean, this felt like an episode that like I would go back to just like throw on and watch again. And like, I mean, and I'm also grading on the curve that it's a 20-minute episode and not a like 2-hour film, right? But yeah, I really liked it.
Yep. All right. Then, yeah, moving on to what was my favorite of the episodes thus far, The Spy Dancer. This is directed by Julien Cheng of Studio La Cachée out of Paris, France. They've worked on an episode of Love, Death, and Robots, as well as Kairos, Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal, and Moon, Guardian of the Moon. Julien Cheng also was the writer on it. And then for the cast of characters, we have Camille Cotain as Loye, Lambert Wilson as John, Casey Chase as Hadis, Rudy James Jeffcott as the officer, Barbara Scaff as Mima / additional voices, Bruce Sherfield as additional voices, and Taylor Gassman as additional voices. And the trivia for this one The large wheeled transport vehicles used by the Imperial Stormtroopers are based on the MTV-7 multi-terrain vehicle, part of Kenner's mini-rig toy line, first released in 1981.
Oh, yeah.
According to IMDb. So yeah, this one, like visually, I loved this one, and the story, I really loved the twist of like, oh, the Imperial officer is her kid. I for whatever reason didn't see that coming,
Nope.
and so it did take me by surprise as like a like. I loved the idea of her as this as the titular spy dancer, using like her art to throw out like the tracking beacons and stuff like that on all of the stormtroopers there for, you know, entertainment and for a good time. And so I appreciated that like she could use her her dancing and all of the movement for that ability, but then like as soon as she sees what she thinks is the you know, the person who stole her life from her, she sends everyone as like, there's a no way out kind of situation here. I'm going to kill this person, and so I love that her, like all of her stuff kind of takes a more volatile dance and movement framework in that then also gets like pulled, and we get like the twist of she stops because she sees it's not the old man that she was expecting, but instead someone who would be her son's age, and then she's really on her own and has to like fight off all of the stormtroopers. And so I thought like action wise, this was my favorite. I thought story wise, I really enjoyed the, and I'm a sucker, given the many years I did theater, I'm a sucker for artists using their art to, as like a form of rebellion and whatnot. So I think that's part of why I think this story spoke to me as much as it did. And then, yeah, just, I thought the beauty of like the cloth flowing in all the different directions and how it was used in different ways, I thought was really cool. Really. And this is also like the one I did not take notes on because I was just so like enraptured by it start to finish. So, yeah, I really like that one. Logan, I want to throw to you because you did not have that reaction.
I didn't, but I really loved your thoughts on it. Yeah, it was very well said. I mean, for me, I think it was the one visually that I didn't click with the most, right? It just didn't. A little bit like the first episode last week, where it was sort of one where like I kept going back and forth. I'm like, do I like this? Do I not like it? Do I like it? Do I not like it? Kind of thing. I sort of had a similar vibe here, being like, I don't know if I like this art style or not. And I kind of kept going back and forth on it. In terms of the actual story itself, I mean, this is a classic like French Resistance World War II.
I was about to say, yeah.
I mean, it is. I knew me or Cameron was going to say. I knew one of us was going to say it, but like it is 100%
La
that
Resistance,
kind of
French
story.
partisan for sure.
Yeah, it is like not even hiding it on its sleeve. So when you said this differentiator, when I was like, oh, of course it is. That makes so much sense. Yeah, I mean, this is. There are a million stories that are just this during World War II and the Nazis, right? Like it is so on the nose there. And that I think is really cool because I think it feels very authentically of that kind of ilk. The actual beats itself, I think, worked a bit less for me. I think the reveal that it was her son, I also didn't see coming,
Nope.
but I didn't like immediately, right? Like I wish it had been the like older Imperial officer, not her son, right? I would have liked. I think I would have liked that finished through line more versus what we get here, right? Like, because I think it was building really well, and I liked the dynamic between her and kind of her younger dancer, and her kind of keep telling her, you know, we're doing this for a reason, we're doing it for a reason, not to like engage the stormtroopers, that kind of stuff, and then her switch in a minute and being like, fuck that, I'm gonna kill this guy. And then basically the minute she like pauses right on the neck and then doesn't finish it, that point onwards, I think the wheels kind of fell off a little bit for me. I didn't like a lot of the reveal. one moment that I thought was nice in that, though, at the very end is when her son basically is back on, like, you know, back in space now, and he's like looking at the picture of like him as a baby, and he's got the little horns, and like he like slightly pushes up his cap, and you can like see his horns have been either like removed or like sanded down or something, where like they're not there, but he's got like a very noticeable like red part where they would be. And I thought that was a like really nice touch of like what he's either fought against himself, what he's had done to him, one or the other, right? Like kind of the ambiguity of that. Sort of like I said last week, this feels like a story that I want more of, right? Like it feels like it is like the beginning of a story, and I still want the end of it, if that makes sense. But it's still, I mean, very good. I mean, I think all 6 of the episodes of Visions we've had so far have been very good, and you know, at this point, I would say it's ahead of season 1 for me. This just happened to be my least favorite of these 3 episodes, which I think are all very good.
Cool. Cameron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually have to disagree with Logan. When the reveal was her son, that's when the wheels got greased and we really started rolling. I loved that because I was like, okay, evil Imperial officer grabs the baby, throws it in the fire. They're not going to show us that he throws the baby in the fire, but then as it peeled away, when he talks about his father, and she doesn't be like, no, like there's no like reveal, like, no, he wasn't your father. It's like, oh, and I'm like, this is my conjecture. I'll put this out there. This is conjecture, but these are the threads I saw being laid out in front of me, and I'm pulling on those threads. I am seeing, like, my feelings on it are, the man is the father of her son. And he came, slaughtered her village, and took what he felt was rightfully his child. And that's the only reason she's still alive, is for whatever lingering attachment was there for that. That's my perspective on it. But I think that plays into it. It's like, why does he only have one of his eyes removed?
Yeah. I think that plays into the French Resistance storyline as well, kind of thing, of you know, of course, a war child.
Yeah, and it's so good. Also, shout out to, you can see 3 little kids in the background of her flashback scene, and it's the 2 boys and the girl. Really, like, I really love the animation style. First off, shout out fat stormtrooper representation. You love to see it. You love to see it. But the moment it was like that, and then they drove up, and then it was like they're going to like a dance club or something like that, I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, there's a dozen movies just like this. And
oh my god.
It's so good. Just so good. I love the young girl who's just like, I want to actually be out there fighting the resistance. The older guy being like, yeah, I've got to take like this, and she goes like, I'm not a stargazer. Like, like it isn't until she sees who she thinks is her old lover, her enemy, the man who took her child from her, that she is ready to pull Inglourious Bastards and burn it all down, with her inside of it. And I love that if it had gone that direction, I don't feel it would have been Star Wars. It would have been Quentin Tarantino. The reveal that it's her son, the reveal that there's actually something, it's way worse than just, or not way, I mean, equally as, I don't know how to like juxtapose how bad each one of them is, but the fact that it's even deeper than just a evil man throws baby in fire to the intricacies of a relationship and resistance and war, like Trevor said, a war child.
I mean, she turned her child against her, or the bad guy turned her child against her and her people. Yep.
It's ideal. It's so good. Story-wise, it's one of my favorites. I do love the art style. There's something very French about it. In that it's like it has a lot of subdued flair to it, which is just fantastic. I love French.
And a lot of very overt flair.
A lot of very overt flair. The motion of the cloth was so beautiful. And I loved especially when she reveals like her wings come out basically with the blades, and like the way that the blades sink through the thing to give her like this awesome deflection or like, you know, distraction stuff to avoid blasters. And it's so great and it's so awesome. And I love seeing these Jedi non-Force user stories that we're getting in this season, especially, and I'm loving that so much that we got this from it, where it's like we can tell so many interesting stories that don't have anything to do with people with lightsabers.
Right.
And we can tell a very contained story about a wounded, cold mother who has her love reignited. And I also shout out at the very end the little tracker coming back as like a plot device, because I thought the plot device that would have come back was when they focus on the communicator on the table. I thought that would have been like her undoing or something. But no, it was the actual the little thing to hide from you that she placed on it was inside of her friggin' hollow locket. This was so French on so many levels, and I loved it. French storytelling at its peak in Star Wars was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. Plus, she almost went Assassin's Creed with the hidden blade kind of thing.
It was so cool when she puts that on and she just goes, whoosh, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was like
Requiesce in pace.
That Imperial officer is getting a stabby through his throaty.
Ready for it, yeah.
And I appreciate also that that obviously, because we get that turn and she wants to do anything but fight him. You still need a big bad for her to fight. So not only is it all the stormtroopers around, which she easily dismantles and takes out and all that stuff, but you've got the big battle droid a la K2SO.
Oh, it's so cool. I loved him. He was awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, shout out to all three of these episodes. I think that is gonna do it. So we'll go ahead and dive into our report card for this batch of episodes. What do we want to give this one? A+ to F. Cameron, go ahead and kick us off.
A+. The Star Wars Visions this season is continuing just to knock it out of the goddamn park. They're doing such a great job.
Cool. Logan?
Yeah, I think it's an A as well. I think these are in the run between my 3 favorite episodes of the season so far, but certainly I think it is the best 3-episode, run maybe of any of the 3-episode arcs of either season 1 or season 2 so far. I just think, and that's what I'm trying to say. The Spy Dancer was my favorite one of these 3, but it is still a very high bar, right? It is still very good. And I think there's something here for 3 different kinds of people with a Wallace and Gromit. Very fun, New Hopian-esque Star Wars one, right? Journey to the Dark Head is very Return of the Jedi, and this one is sort of almost like Empire Strikes Back, kind of more dark and gloomy and moody. And so I just like these 3 episodes a lot. I think it's an A as well for me. And I think, like I said, right now season 2 is ahead of season 1. And so we'll see if they can kind of stick the landing with the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, I think gets an A from me as well. And I think kind of touching on that, I think season 2 as a whole, I think season 1, while I very much loved it and I loved the different stories we got out of it, ultimately, since so much of that was centered around Japanese animation, there is an element of sameness to it compared to what we're getting this season, where it is we're all over the map,
9
quite
different
literally.
countries are telling their stories, right? Yeah.
And so I think we're getting a whole bunch of different flavors, and I love that. I hadn't even put it together because I don't have apart from Les Miserables, I don't have a deep connection to French Resistance kind of art, but I love that one in particular speaks so specifically to the culture it's coming from. And we got that with Screecher's Reach last year too, I felt or last week. So yeah, I love that and I think even the Spain and Chile ones from last week also were speaking, I think, very specifically to their cultural touchstones. So I love that we're getting that as opposed to everyone that kind of is working off of a largely similar cultural touchstone from the first volume. So, yeah, I love the worldwide tour that we went on this season. So let's see if it finishes strong next week.
Well, and that's what I think will be interesting next week too, right? I mean, we're going to get one from a Japanese studio, but we're also going to get one from an Indian and a South African studio, right? And I think, again, like we said, for some of these studios who are doing this stuff for, they're just coming from countries that you don't even really think of doing Star Wars stories for, right? Let alone getting to kind of craft their own kind of narrative and visual style onto it as well. And so it'll be very exciting to kind of see how they wrap it up.
Yep. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this, as we touched on last week. You got a whole bunch of Disney Plus Star Wars stuff, including The Mandalorian, Star Wars The Bad Batch, Tales of the Jedi, Andor, Star Wars The Clone Wars, the series, The Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Zen, Grogu, and Dust Bunnies. Anybody
just watched
watching
Andor 8 times, like I said that last week. Oh, yeah. I am watching something on D+.
Yeah,
I did.
You watched.
I watched Night at the Museum.
There you go. How was that?
It's good. It's very good.
Underrated film.
100%. It was really fun too because it was Shravia's recommendation. She was talking about like 3 days in advance. She wanted to watch it during the weekend, and then we watched it in like classic sitcom situation. Within like 45 minutes, she fell asleep, and it was just me watching Night at the Museum for the rest of that movie. But it was very good. It was a ton of fun, right? I mean, I'm someone who had already liked Night at the Museum quite a bit, and I was happy to see how much it holds up. And also, they spend way more like days at that museum than I thought they did. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting as well. And yeah, it's just a ton of fun, and it is a movie that I think holds up really well. I really enjoyed it.
Interesting. I've never watched it, so we'll have to maybe
have
do
you not?
It's
so interesting. It's so interesting, Trevor, because we're not like that far apart in age, but I feel like we're like just far enough apart within like the millennial generation to be like, there are like these like interesting cross currents that we just completely missed. That like you didn't watch SpongeBob either.
Yeah.
That's one I'll never forget. Yeah, I forget.
I mean, so I'm looking it up. Like Night at Museum,
2007, right?
2006.
2006, yeah.
So yeah, I was like midway through college, so it just
wasn't a freshman in high school. Yeah,
it wasn't a thing I prioritized going and seeing. I mean, it was also probably during an era where like I wasn't seeing movies because I didn't like, unless I had like a relationship and a date, I wasn't going and seeing movies at the theater. And so like the things I watched when they came out were very few and far between. And that didn't really change until like the MCU started kicking off.
Cameron, how old are you again?
I am 33. And the answer to this question is yes, I did see this movie in theaters because I saw it. This was a Abbott Family. I don't know if it was Thanksgiving or if it was Christmas, but it was an Abbott Family holiday film adventure with my entire family. It was a lot of fun. Robin Williams as Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson and the British guy are Cowboy and Romans. Mm-hmm. It has Dick Van Dyke and
Mickey, not Mickey Rooney.
It is Mickey Rooney.
Yeah,
wait, not Mickey Rooney.
Rourke.
No, it's Mickey Rooney. I think we might be confusing with Mickey Rourke.
That's exactly what I was saying. Like, it's not Mickey Rourke, but it's Mickey Rooney.
Yeah, Mickey Rooney. And then the guy...
Dum Dum Give Me Gum Gum. Shout out to the Easter Island statue.
Oh, yeah, the Easter Island statue. But yeah, the whole... Everything about it's such a solid film and people just don't know it. And it's great. People should watch it. It's really, really good.
Well, when we do the inevitable That D Plus show on it, I will point out it was probably a December Abbott Family thing because it was December 17th is basically when the movie came out. So
2006.
2006 and end of 2006.
Or I just turned 17. Okay.
Yeah.
So junior in high school.
14.
There you go. And I know there's plenty others out there, including there was like just an animated Night at the Museum that came out like
I saw that when I watched that. I was like,
probably one of the things that's recommended. Yeah.
Yeah.
They kept that series going on just like they kept National Treasure series going on Disney Plus exclusive kinds of stuff.
I will say sequels to Night at the Museum really solid as well. Not as good as the first one, but they're all really solid.
Maybe we'll find
also RIP to the National Treasure Disney Plus show.
There you go. Maybe we'll have to find a dedicated couple of weeks to do some of that. All right. Yeah, I don't think I watched anything else on Disney Plus this week. Thought about it. Like there've been a couple times I sat down and was like, oh, that like Muppets Mayhem like shorts came out with the Electric Mayhem. I want to sit down and watch that at some point, but I have yet to do so. So
I'll give a shout out also to, I didn't watch it on D Plus, but it's a Disney Plus offering, which is The Simpsons. Weekly, enough people I know like Simpsons on the timeline that I'm constantly getting good Simpsons tweets and like clips on Twitter, and I tagged Trevor in one that was really, it made me really laugh. It was really good.
Yeah, was that the steamed hands one? Steamed
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly what it was.
I was like, I mean, I know it's a meme. I don't know why Logan's tweeting me in this.
It's very funny. I just thought you would enjoy it. It was really that simple. I thought you would enjoy it. Okay, it made me fucking, it's one of my favorite clips from The Simpsons. It hits me every time I watch it. It's always so good.
There you go. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, everybody, for joining me to talk about Star Wars Visions Part 2. We'll be back with the final 3 episodes of this season next week. And hopefully we'll get Frank. Once again, we were going to hopefully have him this week, but he was unable to join us at the last minute. So we'll see if we can get all 4 of us together next week for this. You can follow my co-hosts here. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie, Loggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
I'll give a shout out to the Let's Play stuff happening on YouTube. Trevor just beat Ganon in Breath of the Wild in his Let's Play series as of we recorded this, so it's already live when you listen to this. So that is important Breath of the Wild news. And then also a new video game about Zelda also came out. So go enjoy that. And then Trevor and Cameron just did more. It's Elden Ring. There's too many Dark Souls games. Just did Elden Ring stuff. Like I tweeted when that one came out. That's some of the best stuff that's happening on that nerdy site. It's very, very good. And the tweets, the episodes themselves are very good. Don't get me wrong. The episodes are very good. You should watch the episodes. But the tweets that Trevor puts out are very funny.
The very just laden with anger and hatred tweets, yeah. You follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's, 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to That Nerdy Site Show. We just did a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 spoiler cast. Mm-hmm. If you watched that, you want to know what we thought about the film, go check it out. Trevor and I had a lot to talk about it. So, a lot to talk about it.
Indeed. And you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to those things, I will shout out Cameron's Jedi Fallen Order Let's Play series. Still going, even though we're a couple weeks deep into Jedi Survivor. He's also finished Jedi Survivor. I'm working my way through it. So we'll probably have some Jedi Survivor thoughts on this week's That Nerdy Site show. So stay tuned for all that stuff. And then, at some point we gotta sit down and record more Elden Ring, or do we? We'll see. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, ring notification bells so you get notified every weekday when one of our videos goes live. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other. Class dismissed, and may the Force be with you.
And also with you.
Hell yeah, Cam.